What's going on, YouTube, fam? It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. Definitely watch this video to the end to hear the full story and all the details in the case. For my day one fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. Before I get started, I just want to say this is a requested video, but with that being said, let's get right into the story. When most relationships start off, it's all love, hugs, and Hallmark cards. Everything is so fresh and new, and depending on the individual, you might feel like in that moment, I want this forever. Of course, that's the honeymoon stages. As time goes on and a person takes their mask off, gets comfortable, and shows who they really are, a lot of times it's not who they portrayed themselves to be in the beginning. If there's no strings attached, just a boyfriend and girlfriend kind of situation, you can easily say, you know what, I'm not feeling this, and walk away. But once kids come into the picture, things get complicated. Some people will put their own happiness aside to be there for their kids and to raise them with both parents in the house. So a couple might stay together, even get married, to paint the picture of a loving, stable, two-parent household. But one day, they look at each other and think, like, you know what, I don't really like this person. It's easy to build resentment if you had high expectations of a person and they didn't follow through, or they sold you dreams of a better life. And years later, y'all are still in the same position. The worst thing a person could do is stay in a relationship with a person because y'all have time invested and kids. But really, you are disguising your hate and resentment with fake love. And when some people get to a breaking point, all those years of hate can come out in the worst way. And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we'll be discussing the case of a toxic marriage that came to a fatal end in a Baltimore hospital room. Back in 2017, 30-year-old Anita Jones was navigating life in Baltimore. The mother and wife had her hands full, with 6 kids, all by the same man. Her husband, 33-year-old Christopher Yancey Sr. The couple had been together for almost 20 years, as their relationship went back to their teen years, with Anita first getting pregnant with their first child at just 13 years old. According to her, things started out good, but eventually turned toxic. It would turn physical. She claimed she was also attacked emotionally and verbally almost daily. But wanting to be with the father of her child, she stayed. They got married and eventually had 5 more kids. But by 2017, things had ran their course. Still legally married, but estranged. Christopher had moved on with his life and was in another relationship. He had a baby by another woman, in total leaving him with 9 kids. But him and Anita still had the co-parent. Besides, they had 6 kids together. In October 2017, they would get some news that their 14-year-old son needed to have a serious surgery. He would be having the procedure done at the world-renowned Johns Hopkins Hospital in East Baltimore, known for having some of the best doctors and surgeons in the world. On October 13th, Anita headed to the hospital. Concerned about his son, Christopher also came to visit and wait for the surgery to be done. As the mother and father talked, it quickly turned into an argument. As they were in the room alone, people heard all the commotion. Minutes later, Anita ran out the room yelling, "He did it. He cut himself," claiming Christopher was upset their son was undergoing surgery and tried to take himself out. Doctors and nurses ran into the room and noticed the man had been stabbed 2 times in the chest. And despite being in one of the best hospitals in the world, doctors couldn't save his life. And unfortunately, Christopher would pass away right there in the hospital room. Anita seemed upset and started calling family members, saying he is gone while crying, and left the hospital a few hours later. But some of the staff members claimed the wound didn't seem self-inflicted, and Anita was known for carrying a pocket knife, which in a city like Baltimore, having a weapon is not uncommon. But a sanitation worker at the hospital claimed he saw the woman run out of the hospital and throw a small object in a dumpster. which some felt was the knife. Another critical piece of evidence police were able to obtain was Anita's last phone call before the incident. Somebody called her from jail, and on a recorded line, she stated, "Christopher is getting on my nerves. He makes me want to hurt him bad. I can't take it no more." Just a few minutes before the stabbing. With that information, Anita was picked up, taken into custody, charged with first-degree hit, manslaughter, and carrying a dangerous weapon with the intent to do harm. Being that it was a big hospital, the story made national headlines, and Christopher's family was hurt. They stated yes, the two had a lot of issues and resentment towards each other, but nobody never thought it would turn fatal. As the case started making its way to trial, Anita's attorney painted a picture of self-defense. Claiming the day in question, the two started going back and forth because even though Christopher showed up to the hospital, according to Anita, he was trying to leave early and she felt some kind of way. She stated, she then said, "I bet if it was your new baby, you would stay." And then she stated she got disrespectful, stating, and I'm saying this nicely, "I hope your baby meets the Most High." She claimed Christopher snapped, yoked her up, and put his hands around her neck. She stated that's when she upped the blade, stabbed him once, but he wouldn't stop, so she poked him again. She claimed he then stated, like, "Yo, you cut me, and it's serious," before passing out. As the jury heard her and her defense team paint a picture of years and years of fighting and toxic behavior, they came to a decision that Anita wasn't guilty of first-degree hit, but they did find her guilty of manslaughter and a dangerous weapon charge. Eventually, she was sentenced to 10 years for the manslaughter and another 3 years for the weapon, in total of 13 years. She appealed the conviction, and police never found the weapon, and no one saw her with it, so the 3 years was given back, leaving Anita to serve only 10 years in prison, and which, according to the person who sent me this, she came home a few years ago. Rest in peace to Christopher. I send my prayers and condolences to his family and their kids. I know that was tough on the family, and to lose your mother at that period of time and also your father had to be hard on them. In a situation like this, the only two people that know what really happened was in that hospital room. Unfortunately, Christopher is not here to tell his side of the story, but the court felt Anita could have been telling the truth, reflecting in her light sentence. But I want to leave this one open for discussion. I want to know y'all thoughts on the situation. Do you think Anita was mad Christopher moved on and had another baby? Or do you think it was just years of built up anger and resentment that came out? Self-defense or premeditated? Let me know what you think in the comments. Yeah, man, crazy story. Rest in peace, that man. I send my prayers to his family. But I ain't gonna talk too much more about this one. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. This is another episode of the Baltimore Way. It's your boy Tony 2 times. Love, fam. What's going on, YouTube, fam? It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. Definitely watch this video to the end to hear the full story and all the details in the case. For the day one, fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. Let's get right into the story. When most young men decide to jump in the streets, it's either due to necessity, being in need of some money because their household might not be functional, somebody getting high, or family struggling. But in other cases, it's fascination or blind loyalty to the neighborhood they grew up in or certain individuals in that area. As a teen, you want to be in with the popular crowd. And in today's world, the so-called cool kids are saying gang gang, showing off switches on social media and saying what's the fastest way they can crash out just to have a name in the streets. We see it every day. Teens who haven't lived life yet making decisions they can't come back from, rather pulling the trigger or putting themselves in a game that ends either one or two ways. But to play devil's advocate, we all have been there before. Being young, wanting to fit in, trying to make a few dollars, and be considered somebody that's on that type of time. To some kids, it's just a phase. They grow out of it. But in certain environments, it becomes a lifestyle. When the people around you and the things you see line up with living the street life as a young man that's easily influenced, the decision is easy. I'm gonna go out here and do whatever my people doing and go with that move. But the thing the gang or squad never tells you is that there's no honor amongst thieves, no loyalty in the streets. It's every man for themselves. And when it comes down to it, the same one you calling bro will sit behind you and pull that trigger. And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we'll be discussing a case of a teen who thought he was going out to hit licks with the gang, but ended up getting backdoored. Back in the summer of 2022, 18-year-old Jeremiah Williamson was navigating life in Baltimore. A regular city teen, Jeremiah liked dirt bikes, hanging with his friends, and trying to make a few dollars. Just like most young men going through growing pains, trying to get in where they fit in, Jeremiah made some bad choices and found himself a part of a growing epidemic in Baltimore, being a member of a carjacking ring. Him and his guys would hit the city trying to catch somebody slipping, take their car, whether just to have a stolo or in hopes of finding valuable items to sell to make a few dollars. One of his homies was an 18-year-old man named Jared Byrne. Jared was known to keep his hands in the mix, and he was always in and out of trouble. On June 21st, the crew went out, Jeremiah, Jared, and two other guys. They rode through the city and found the person to carjack. The next day, on June 22nd, BPD got a call of a body that was found by some railroad tracks in the 2500 block of Georgetown Road in southwest Baltimore. They responded to the location to find a person severely burned, suffering from a gunshot wound to the head, a burnt cell phone, car keys, and money. A few yards down the block was a burnt Honda sitting in the parking lot. The victim, who was unfortunately pronounced gone on the scene, was taken to the medical examiner's office to be identified, and the results came back to be the body of Jeremiah. Police didn't know exactly what happened to the young man, but they did get a report of a carjacking the night before, not too far from that area. During their investigation, they linked Jeremiah with the car that was burning and noticed it was the same car that was reported stolen earlier the day before, and the young man was suspected of being with the group who took it. Names was coming in of the people the young man was hanging with, including Jared, whose name was also ringing in another case in another part of the city. Rewind 1 week prior, in another part of town, 21-year-old Kevin Moody was unfortunately shot and killed in the 2200 block of Ashton Street. On June 15th, 2022, BPD received a call of shots fired. They located the young man. He was rushed to a local hospital suffering from gunshot wounds, but unfortunately, he wouldn't survive his injuries. Police were informed it was an alleged retaliation, with somebody claiming Kevin was involved in a hit of another young man who was friends with a 19-year-old man named Antonio Perisma. Police got footage of the incident that showed the car pull up and two men hop out and shoot at Kevin. One of the suspects, being Antonio, and another familiar name also came up in the case, none other than Jared. The two young men were picked up. While being questioned about Kevin, another incident came up involving his friend Jeremiah. Jared admitted to being with Jeremiah the night he was hit. He claimed they stole the car, and there was a disagreement between Jeremiah and the rest of the group. So they basically all decided the young man had to go. But according to the other guys, Jared was the trigger man, in which when he was arrested, he was in possession of the gun that was used to take Jeremiah's life. He claimed he ran after the shots went off, but he didn't see who the shooter was or who set the car and body on fire. But police had surveillance footage of both homicide scenes. Jared was taken into custody, charged with 2 counts of first-degree hit, carjacking, conspiracy, and also a gun charge. And Antonio, just 1 count of first-degree hit in reference to his case on Kevin. As their cases started making their way to trial, Antonio pled guilty in his case. After it was stated, he thought Kevin was involved in the hit on his friend, and his lawyer claimed the young man was caught up and addicted to drugs heavily at the time of the incident and not in his right state of mind. For his admission of guilt, Antonio was sentenced to 61 years in prison for his role in Kevin's shooting. But Jared never admitted to being involved in the situation, which led to the judge to show no mercy. When he was too found guilty and sentenced to life plus 35 years for his involvement with the case, including Antonio and Kevin. And on November 1st of this year, Jared pled guilty to backdooring Jeremiah and taking his life. He was sentenced to another life sentence, all suspended for 35 years, as he was pointed to as the trigger man. Rest in peace to both Jeremiah and Kevin. I send my prayers and condolences to their families. I know these are two different incidents, so I might double back and do a separate story on Kevin. But with Jeremiah, he trusted Jared and the other members of the little team they was out with. But it just goes to show you might feel like your homies is gang, but how do they really feel about you? To shoot Shorty from behind in the back of the head and leave him on some tracks, that's cold-blooded. They never stated why they turned on him. For all the hoppers out there, watch the company you keep, because your mans that's outside doing everything with you might take that same exact gun y'all using one day and put it to the back of your head. But hey, that's the Baltimore way. Man, messed up story. Rest in peace both them young men that lost their life. I send my prayers to their family. But yeah, I ain't gonna talk too much more about this. Leave it in the comments. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. It's another episode of the Baltimore Way. It's your boy Tony 2 times. Love, fam. I'm out.
It's your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 times, and I'm back with another episode of the Baltimore Way. In this video, I'll be telling the story of a recent tragedy that shook a family and community after a beloved nurse and mother was taken too soon. But before we get into this video, I'd like to say thank you to Daryl Bird for the donation. Thank you, Daryl. We appreciate you and your support. If you'd like to support the channel monetarily, you can find the information on the screen. And to support us for absolutely no cost, please hit that like button. Also, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and join the Tony 2 times family. Tap that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And of course, feel free to share this video with everyone you know. Also, if you'd like to see more episodes of The Baltimore Way, please click the link to the playlist in the description box after this video to get caught up. Alright, let's get into it. On the night of Tuesday, October 29th, 2024, in Glen Burnie, 30-year-old nurse Natasha Renee Harris was on her way to work at the University of Maryland, Baltimore Washington Medical Center. She left her apartment and headed to her car. At around 7:40 p.m., residents in the area called 911 after hearing gunshots. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Natasha in the parking lot, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. The mother of one and hard-working nurse was rushed to the hospital where she worked after emergency personnel did all they could at the scene. Natasha's father, who was at work, received a call from a neighbor telling him that they had heard shots fired in the parking lot. He later received a call from Anne Arundel police notifying him that his daughter had been shot. After Natasha arrived at Baltimore Washington Medical Center for further treatment, her condition turned grave, and she was pronounced gone soon after. Natasha Renee Harris, lovingly called Tasha, was born on June 16, 1994, in Baltimore, Maryland, to her proud parents. Natasha was raised in the Severn and Glen Burnie area with her younger sister. She was a lifelong Maryland resident and graduated from Glen Burnie High School in 2012. She had a passion for learning and was always a high achiever. Her true passion was to one day work with women and children. She had such a motherly, loving, and gentle demeanor. Natasha, focused and driven, began to pursue her dreams at Anne Arundel Community College. She graduated in 2016 with her associate's degree in nursing and started her career as a pediatric registered nurse. Natasha continued to further her education at the University of Maryland, where she received her Bachelor of Science degree in nursing. Natasha would end up becoming a mother to a beautiful baby girl. She was deeply devoted to motherhood and adored her daughter. Natasha was wonderful as a pediatric RN and soon transitioned from that role into her dream career working in maternal care as a labor and delivery nurse, where she would find her true joy working with soon-to-be and postpartum mothers. When Natasha wasn't working, she of course enjoyed spending time with her 6-year-old daughter and family, reading, cooking, and trying the best bites with her friends and coworkers. As Natasha advanced in her career in the mother and baby unit, she decided to go back to school to obtain her master's degree as a women's health nurse practitioner, which she was currently working towards just before tragedy struck. Despite all the wonderful things taking place in her life, she was also facing some personal battles. Natasha was involved in an ongoing custody dispute and was dealing with an ex-boyfriend who was stalking her, according to friends and family. Natasha would be so fearful that she would have friends walk her to her car. She thought about getting a protective order, but she didn't want to do anything that would set this ex off even more. Could her obsessed stalker ex-boyfriend be responsible for ending her life? Police are not releasing any information on a possible suspect and are asking for the public's help in Natasha's tragic slaying. Undisclosed evidence was collected from the scene and witnesses were interviewed. Police did confirm that they believe Natasha was targeted and it was not a random act. The investigation into Natasha's slaying is ongoing. May Natasha Harris rest in peace. My deepest condolences to her family. I can't imagine the pain that they are feeling during this difficult time. Natasha was so beautiful and seemed to be a bright light in this world. I feel for her little girl. It's very sad to have to lose a parent so young and under these circumstances. Natasha's grief-stricken family is calling for justice. Hopefully, they get the answers they so desperately are searching for in this tragic case. In my opinion, the perpetrator had to be familiar with Natasha's schedule and movements. It sounds like they may have even been laying in wait for her. She probably didn't even see it coming. So heartbreaking. Again, may Natasha rest peacefully. Fam, tell me your thoughts on this terrible case. Let me know in the comments below. Alright fam, that's it for this episode of the Baltimore Way. Thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 Times. Until next time.
What's going on YouTube, fam? This your boy Tony 2 Times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. Definitely watch this video to the end to hear the full story and all the details in the case. For the day one, fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you're feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. Let's get right into the story. As parents, we all try our best to raise our kids the right way. We give them basic needs like shelter, clothes, food, We try to give them game of wisdom to help guide them through things we know they will encounter in their life. So when the time comes, they will be ready. And for some parents, they go above and beyond, putting their life to the side so their kids can achieve their dreams, hoping they become better and navigating life than them. But as our babies get older, society tells us at 18, the right thing to do is let go and let them find their own way, because that's when a young man or woman is considered grown. And by that time, your child has picked up things you might not taught them yourself, just by going out into the world, and now they have their own perception on how they view things and want to live their life. Some gravitate the right way, and others take the wrong path. But as parents, it's hard not to be there for your child, no matter what they decide they want to do and which way they want to go, especially when it comes to mothers and their sons. Those bonds always seem stronger. Unfortunately, for a lot of black men in our community, we have the highest rate of undiagnosed mental health. Whether it's things we saw growing up or experiences that caused trauma that we bottled up and never spoke about. No matter how good of a parent you are, it's really nothing you can do about your young adult's mind state, but give them love and support. Some decide at 18, you are grown and out my house, my job is done. But others might not be so quick to let go, especially if their child seems a little bit unstable and not ready to be out here on their own. But we never think the ones we give life to will ever turn on us, but unfortunately, it happens. And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we'll be discussing a recent case of a man who asked his neighbor for a ride, leading to them uncovering his evil secret. In November 2024 of last year, Miss Joyce Gaskins was a 64-year-old woman living her life in Baltimore. The oldest sibling of 7 and mother of 5 kids who were all grown, Joyce knew all about family, leadership, and sacrifice. She loved spending time with her loved ones when she wasn't sewing or watching her mystery movies on TV. Everybody in the building she lived in on Drew Hill Avenue in West Baltimore knew Miss Joyce, who stayed at the home with her son, 25-year-old AJ Wiggins. AJ will often be seen with his mother or walk in the neighborhood. He at first seemed normal to everybody around the way, but eventually to some, he seemed a little bit thrown off from their interactions with the young man. But nobody judged him. In fact, they would look out for him if he needed a ride and Miss Joyce wasn't around, and ask how his mother was doing. In November of last year, one neighbor in the building realized she didn't see or speak to Miss Joyce in about 3 days, which wasn't like the lively older woman who usually would be outside, moving through the neighborhood and talking to everybody in the building. She thought to herself, maybe she wasn't feeling well or maybe she was out of town. Until November 15th, the woman and neighbor noticed AJ acting strange. He always seemed off, but now it was more than normal. They eventually walked to their car, getting ready to go somewhere, when to their surprise, AJ was sitting inside. Caught off guard, they asked like, yo, you good? What's going on? In which he stated yes, and asked, could he get a ride somewhere? The neighbor stated, I got some business to take care of. Why you just don't ask your mother? In which the young man got quiet and got out the car. They then said, come on, let's go to your house. I haven't seen Miss Joyce in a few days anyway. They walked AJ to the building, and in the home, they started calling Miss Joyce's name before glancing in the room, seeing her laying motionless between a mattress and a wall. They ran out the house scared and called BPD and reported they think their neighbor was deceased. BPD responded to the 1600 block of Drew Hill Avenue and walked in the house to find AJ laying by his mother. As they zoned in on Miss Joyce, they already knew she was gone and had been for a few days. AJ himself seemed traumatized and sat in a daze. He wouldn't talk. When asked what happened to his mother, he wrote on a piece of paper, 666. In his pockets, 2 medications was found, one for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. As police took the young man to homicide for questioning, they quickly realized AJ had mental issues. He was sent to a mental health facility while police investigated what happened to Miss Joyce. The medical examiner who had her body saw bruises on her neck and noticed the woman had undissolved pills in her mouth, in which her cause of slaying was asphyxiation. But no one knew who did it. Maybe somebody broke in while AJ was out the house. While the young man was under evaluation, he would start talking and opening up more. But at first, it still seemed he didn't know what happened to his mother. Weeks would go by as detectives talked to the neighbor, who gave them the rundown of the days leading up to the discovery. Miss Joyce, who was usually outside or driving, wasn't around for days, and AJ himself would just be out walking the streets, seemingly out of it. The day she found him sitting in the car, she stated she was a little taken aback, but not scared because he wasn't violent. They searched the home and everything seemed normal. Weeks would go by with no leads, until one day, AJ got comfortable with a staff member at the hospital he was at. While they were talking, he casually said, "Yeah, I gave my mother some pills. I wanted it to look like she OD'd, but then I decided to just choke her out." He also stated he didn't know what to do after the fact, so he just left her there. Listening, acting like everything was normal, the staff asked for more details, but AJ never stated the reason he did that to his mother. They immediately left the room and called BPD to report what the young man had just stated. He was the one who took his mother's life and tried to cover it up, making it look like she did that to herself. Police went to the hospital and arrested AJ, charging him with first-degree murder of his mother. He is currently being held with no bail. Rest in peace to Miss Joyce. I send my prayers and condolences to her family. I can't imagine how she felt looking up and realizing it was her own son that was doing that to her. I know mental health is real. I saw people close to me battle, and over years, they tried to fight. Eventually, you see things in them change. Even AJ's picture from a few years back until now, you can see the change in his face and eyes. I don't know what some of them medications do. I often hear people say, I don't like to take them because the way they make me feel. They don't feel like themselves when they on them. But the thing that got me with this one was that it takes some calculated thinking to say, I'm gonna give my mother some pills to make it look like she overdosed, act surprised and hurt when she is found, then to police act like I don't know nothing. You gotta be able to think that out. Not saying AJ is all that, but that took some kind of awareness. As parents, what do you do when your child gets to this point? If they are dealing with mental issues, let them be, try to get them some help, or just move on with your life. It's hard to see our children in any other light than we view them in. I'm sure AJ wasn't always like this, but unfortunately, things transpired in his life, leading to him breaking mentally and admitting to taking his mother's life. But I want to know what y'all think about this situation. Leave it in the comments. Yeah, man, crazy story. Rest in peace to Miss Joyce. I definitely send my prayers to her family. But I ain't gonna talk too much more about this one. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. Y'all let me know what y'all think about the situation. It's another episode of the Baltimore Way. Y'all already know it's all love, fam. It's your boy Tony 2 times. I'm out.